In the past few decades of television, it wouldn't be very difficult to find a show that didn't get the ending you thought it deserved. For many of you, in this moment, the one you unfortunately might think of first is Attack on Titan. This is your spoiler warning for the entire show, of course. Now, when I come across an ending that is as strongly divisive as Attack on Titan's is, I try to separate myself and think, what happened? Not what went wrong or what should have been done, but simply, what happened? Because for every person that dislikes a controversial ending to a show, there's almost always another person who enjoys it. Some people enjoy things that others don't. It's as simple as that. Some people will have enjoyed seeing the strong feelings Eren still had for Mikasa at the end despite his behavior and mannerisms, and some won't. Some will like that not everything was fixed by Eren at the very end of the show, that there wasn't eternal peace, but some would have wanted everything to be right and peaceful. Neither side is really wrong for feeling the way they do, so I try to maintain a balance between the two because, well, that's my job here. After reading Attack on Titan's ending well over 2 years ago and now watching it, I couldn't help but try to analyze and explain just how it happens. How such beloved, incredible shows so often build up to a finale that ends up being so controversial. And before we get any deeper, I want to preface before everyone starts commenting, I like the ending. I've liked it ever since I read it 2.5 years ago, with my old video from back then as proof, and I still like it now. I think some things went extremely well, some things went pretty poorly, and some things went fine. I know there are parts that were not executed well, trust me. I know, you don't have to tell me. And I'm not necessarily excusing those aspects of the episode. I'm acknowledging them here, and giving my insight into more context of the journey up until this point, and how our world itself has affected our opinion of it, because it's about more than just this single ending episode. It's 11.5 years of work and build-up. And I've thought about this case for a long time now, as I said. And it led me on a long path of self-reflection on not only what I enjoy, but what the community at large finds satisfying in an ending. The first step of this lengthy investigation quite inevitably led me to look at the broader scope of things. The context. Or maybe a better word for my explanation here is the Zeitgeist. Let me explain this briefly before circling back to Attack on Titan. The word Zeitgeist means the spirit of the time. It is the trends and thoughts and feelings within a certain era, and it is often reflected through media. The way characters act, what they say, how the story is portrayed, it all, when looked at through the right lens, has some sort of reflections and mirroring in society in whatever period of time that the story came out in. To give a few examples, let's look at 12 Angry Men, a classic American film from the 20th century. In this movie, the strong opinions and dialogue among the characters about the race and upbringing of the defendant whose guilt they're trying to decide on is famous for reflecting the ongoing divisiveness of segregation in America at the time of the movie in the late 50s. Likewise, let's bring it back to anime. Look at how the Akira slide is recreated across all kinds of media throughout history. It's demonstrative of the era we now live in, and how deeply ingrained in society anime and Japanese influences have become over the past 50 or so years. The Zeitgeist is the embodiment of society's ever-shifting culture, if you will. Now, in that same vein, we, as Western TV show watchers, have come to be disappointed time and time again with the endings of TV shows over the past few decades. Truthfully, at this point, it is sadly just about as common to come across a popular TV show where the ending disappoints rather than delivers. The last season, most notably, of many modern shows completely collapse, ranging from dramas like Lost and Dexter, to sitcoms like How I Met Your Mother and The Office, though the latter still managed to pull together a pretty good ending. And that is not to mention what of course everyone was thinking of here, the king of monsters himself, Game of Thrones. It has built us up over decades to focus more and more as a society on the endings. Because they are so hard to perfectly land, and because we are so often disappointed by them, they frequently become the utmost focus in determining a show's worth, no matter what came before it. Oh, how quickly did Game of Thrones fall from society's graces? After becoming such a central part of the modern zeitgeist, coining terms that were so well known like King in the North, Mother of Dragons, The Red Wedding, being hailed as easily one of the most beloved and influential pieces of media in the 2010s, it is now almost exclusively remembered and memorialized as a good series ruined by a poorly made ending. Heavy emphasis on the poorly made ending. Having a quote-unquote Game of Thrones ending is an ingrained piece of the modern era's zeitgeist, a representation of our collective sadness over frequently witnessing bad endings to some of the best TV shows ever, and its permeation into our very perspective of all TV media in the aftermath still lasts to this day. And Attack on Titan got really big. Like, the #1 show in America when it was airing big. Amplified by the boost in mainstream popularity that anime got over the course of the pandemic, Attack on Titan built up slowly but surely to an epic finale, one that inevitably was bound to face the scrutiny and criticism of mainstream audiences who have grown to want the world from a show's ending. There are expectations in place now. Society has come to expect something, conditioned to dislike seeing endings fail so badly that we've grown to crave only the best of endings. This, psychologically, practically sets us up for disappointment. John Green said it extremely well. It occurred to me that the voracious ambition of humans is never sated by dreams coming true, because there is always the thought that everything might be done better and again. Essentially, we will never be satisfied because we always want more from it. In all truths, it is fair to do this, but people expect the perfect ending. An ending that would resolve all endings, tie up all loose ends, and please, oh God, just don't pull a Game of Thrones. And the finale arrived in the Attack on Titan manga first 2.5 years ago, and, well, people immediately started comparing it to Game of Thrones in terms of its scale of disaster, which I don't necessarily agree with at all. People wanted to rewrite it, or have this character have this ending, or have this storyline end this way. There's simply no way to satisfy everyone's expectations. That's the truth. Let's bring it to a more specific context within Attack on Titan, to one of the most divisive issues with the ending, Eren's character arc. Some fans love Eren post-time skip, and wanted to see that Eren had everything planned. His outer appearance of silence, brooding, and deceit reflected his inner determination to do what he believed needed to be done to free his people. They wanted to believe that, having seen the past, present, and future, he had put the puzzle pieces together and knew exactly what he had to do now. But now let's look at the other fans, whose faith lies with pre-time skip Eren, who believe that this is all a facade, who acknowledge that Eren's shift in character after the time skip is not a reflection of true character development, but think that this is a sign that he has, ironically, lost his free will in pursuit of freeing his people. That perhaps the younger, headstrong, and brash Eren that we knew pre-time skip never left, but is instead being pulled into the tide by the overwhelming power of the Attack Titan to carry out a future and fate that he can see but cannot control. I think both sides are equally valid arguments. In fact, I don't think that either one is completely wrong, and that both actually have some qualities that are true. And I think the ending shows that. Eren did have the determination needed to free his people and the mindset to carry out the rumbling, but at the same time, he was still a slave to Ymir's powers and the future that he witnessed. He was still a young child. It's something you can see in his outburst to Armin about Mikasa. But of course, there was still that darker side of him as well. But because both sides of interpretation are quite radically different, the people who expected Eren to turn out exactly how they think he should be on their side of the argument are disappointed to see that he might fall a little bit on the other side too. There's a quote I quite like by Donald Miller where he says, "When you stop expecting people to be perfect, you can like them for who they are." Look, none of us truly understood Eren after the time skip. His intentions were muddy at best, because we didn't know the range of his powers, the extent of his master plan, because Isayama never fully told us. And throwing it all at the end? Yeah, it could have been done better by him. This isn't all on the fans, it's a shared effort with Isayama. I'm not going to say he's a saint and that everything was done right, because again, it wasn't. But we never knew 100% who Eren was. It was a primordial soup of crafted theories that gave life to our vision of Eren. And this led to people having such divisive and opinionated views on him. People built their own theories, ideas in their heads because there was so little to form any kind of agreed consensus around. And when you finally reveal who he is at the very end of the story, it's setting up a lot of those people on either side for disappointment. Because they wanted something more, instead of just accepting what is. And look, no matter what can be said about the ending, Isayama does deserve credit where it's due. This road to make a manga is not an easy one. Manga series are notoriously taxing to write, both physically and mentally. Even if we were to disregard the lack of sleep and carpal tunnel and spinal injury inducing toll that constantly drawing and writing entails, you have to look at what creating a monthly manga like Attack on Titan really means. Think about this. If you're a normal author, you have an initial deadline for your book in its entirety before you hand it over to the editors and publishing company. Each chapter varies in difficulty and pressure to write. Some have important moments, some don't. And so you can adjust your pace as much as you need to until you inevitably hit the due date. If you really needed to, you could spend half a year on the first 90% of the book and spend the last half of the year writing the last 10%, making sure to tie up every loose end carefully and finish it in style. Of course, I'm not saying this is how it goes, but they have the ability to choose. That's not to mention that if it's a series spanning multiple books, you have who knows how long between sequels to plan out your next move. I mean, look, George R.R. Martin hasn't published a new book in the Game of Thrones series in over 12 years. For reference, Attack on Titan and its 139 chapters were all written and published in only 11. The manga industry is very different from what we see as normal writing. Imagine you're writing a book, but you must draw, edit, revise, and publish every single chapter every single month. And every month after you have to release it, your work is at the world's mercy, left to their critiques and opinions. You see what they say, how they view it, and you must continue writing afterwards. Writing a manga is not a solitary journey by any means for the author. It is completed in slow, steady iterations, and that builds pressure. Don't you think that Isayama wanted to take back at any point? Don't you think that any manga author thought, oh, I could have written that better, or that chapter could have been slightly better, but they didn't have a choice? Once you make a chapter, there's no going back. Many authors know the ending they want to create from the very start, but who's to say that the publishing company won't make you change things along the way? Or that a fan's critiques of one chapter won't influence how your next chapter looks? It's impossible to plan every step of a manga from the start, so even if you know the ending from the very beginning, you don't know all the storylines you're going to have to wrap up by that ending. That's a daunting task. when every move you make is subject to the world's views and scorn. Look, Attack on Titan got the ending that it did. Isayama had the chance to rewrite things for the last episode, but for the most part he didn't. Because this is the ending. And for a moment, I think we just have to step back and, instead of imposing our own expectations, desires, and ideas onto this final chapter of an incredible saga, acknowledge that this is how the characters' stories ended. It's just like Attack on Titan's themes, ironically. Things don't always end happy. Some things will be good, a lot of things won't. But you have to push on in life regardless. Otherwise, we'll just continue feeding into our own hatred of TV show endings until there's nothing left to do but dread them, knowing that they will never be as good as we want them to be. So just enjoy the moment, because none of our lives would be the same without Attack on Titan. Thank you, Isayama. No one's perfect, but you brought something amazing to the world. I will now sign off on what is most likely my very last video on Attack on Titan. That's pretty crazy to say. As always, this has been the Anime Culture Corner. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for future in-depth show, manga, and character analyses.